The studio lights shone brightly, and the audience buzzed with curiosity. Dr. Phil sat at the center, his signature calm yet commanding presence filling the room. "Today, we have a story that has been decades in the making," he began, glancing toward the guests seated across from him. "A family torn apart 30 years ago, and one sibling who disappeared without a trace." The guest, a woman in her late 40s, clasped her hands nervously, her eyes betraying a mix of hope and fear. "I haven't seen my brother in 30 years, she said softly, her voice quivering. I thought I would never see him again." The audience murmured, some nodding in sympathy, others wide-eyed at the tension. Dr. Phil leaned forward. "We don't always get the closure we deserve, and sometimes life keeps us apart from the people we love the most. But today might just change everything." The camera panned across the audience, capturing their anticipation. You could feel the tension in the room, everyone waiting for a breakthrough that could either heal old wounds or reopen them. For decades, this family has carried questions, regrets, and what-ifs, Dr. Phil continued. But the person they lost might be sitting somewhere in this studio right now. The guest's hands tightened around her lap, a nervous gesture mirrored by several audience members. "I don't know if I can face him," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've wondered about him every single day, where he went, why he left, if he even wanted to see me again." Dr. Phil nodded, acknowledging the weight of her words. "It's natural to feel fear, to feel uncertainty. But sometimes, life surprises us in the most unexpected ways." He paused, letting the silence settle. "What's about to happen? Well, it's going to shock everyone here in this studio." The audience leaned forward, a collective intake of breath filling the air. Cameras swiveled, capturing every anxious glance, every tightening hand, every heart ready to witness a reunion that had been 3 decades in the making. "And when it happens," Dr. Phil said, his voice steady, "the reactions, the emotions, the confessions, they'll remind all of us why family is worth fighting for." What happens next will leave everyone in the studio speechless, and it might just leave you speechless too. Have you ever lost contact with someone you love for years? Comment below. The studio lights seemed to dim slightly as Dr. Phil leaned back in his chair, giving the guest a reassuring nod. "Before we move forward," he said, "I want our audience to understand the full story, because family stories like these aren't just about what happened in one moment. They're about decades of life, choices, and sometimes misunderstandings." The guest took a deep breath, her fingers trembling slightly as she began. 30 years ago, my brother and I were inseparable. We shared everything, secrets, dreams, even the smallest moments of everyday life. But then, something happened. Something I still don't fully understand." Her voice caught. "We had a fight. I was young and stubborn. He was angry. And I said things I shouldn't have said. Words I regret to this day. I thought we'd reconcile soon. But then he left. And he never came back." The audience shifted in their seats. You could feel the weight of 30 years of unanswered questions hanging in the air. Dr. Phil nodded, allowing the pause to stretch for a moment, letting everyone absorb the gravity of what had been lost. "And for 30 years, she continued, I've wondered where he went. Did he think I didn't care? Did he think I hated him? I've tried calling, writing letters, nothing ever reached him. And I always feared, what if he didn't want to be found?" Tears welled in her eyes. The audience murmured, empathy spreading through the room. Dr. Phil's voice was calm but firm. "Sometimes, life keeps us apart not because of malice or hate, but because circumstances, timing, and misunderstandings create walls that are difficult to overcome. But today we have an opportunity for clarity." The guest wiped her eyes and took another deep breath. "I just want to know why he left. I want to hear from him, to understand. And maybe I just want to tell him I forgive him, if that's what he needs to hear too." Dr. Phil turned to the audience. Family estrangement can be one of the hardest things to endure. And sometimes, the people who leave are carrying their own burdens, pain that they haven't shared. But the chance for reconciliation, rare as it is worth seeing through. The camera slowly panned over the audience, capturing their rapt attention. You could feel the collective anticipation, the emotional charge in the room. Everyone seemed to lean in, as if the slightest sound might signal a breakthrough. And now, Dr. Phil continued, we wait. Because the most important person in this room, the person who has the power to change this story, might already be here. They could walk in at any moment. The audience sat in suspense, some whispering to their neighbors, others gripping the armrests of their chairs. Phones were discreetly raised, ready to capture history if it unfolded before their eyes. The guest's hands were clenched, her knuckles white, her heart racing as if she could already sense the moment of reckoning approaching. Dr. Phil's tone softened. I know this is hard, but we want to engage our viewers as well. So here's a question for you watching at home or anywhere in the world. What city or country are you watching this from? And have you ever lost contact with someone you love for decades? Comment below, because right now, you're part of this story too. The guest smiled faintly, grateful for the pause, for the recognition that her story wasn't hers alone. It's strange, she admitted. Even after all these years, I feel connected to him. I don't know how, but I do. And I hope he feels the same. Dr. Phil nodded, looking directly into the camera. Life doesn't always give us second chances. But today, we might witness one. And for everyone watching, this is a reminder. Never give up on family, because you never know when the moment for reunion will arrive. Suddenly, the studio door at the far side creaked open slightly. A few audience members glanced up, but no one moved. Dr. Phil's eyes narrowed slightly, his hand raised subtly, signaling the crew to hold steady. The tension became palpable, the air thick with expectation. Could it be the estranged sibling? Could this long-awaited reunion finally happen today? The guest's breath caught. She didn't dare hope too much. After all, 30 years is a long time, but her heart raced nonetheless. She could feel the anticipation building, the silence amplifying the thrum of her own emotions. The audience held its collective breath, the studio frozen in a moment of suspense. Dr. Phil finally leaned forward again, his voice calm but electric with tension. In a few moments, you're going to see why some family stories take decades to unfold. And trust me, what happens next will leave you speechless. The camera lingered on the guest's anxious face, capturing every flicker of hope, fear, and anticipation. The audience leaned forward, holding their collective breath. Every eye in the studio, and millions watching from around the world, waited for the next moment. The arrival of the sibling who had been missing for 30 years. Could you forgive someone after 30 years apart? Share your thoughts and your city or country in the comments below. The studio was tense, a heavy silence hanging in the air as Dr. Phil gestured to the cameras to keep steady. Every eye was on the main guest, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to calm her racing heart. 30 years of unanswered questions, unspoken words, and unresolved pain had led to this very moment. Then, the studio doors at the far end creaked open just a little wider. A hush swept across the room. No one moved at first. The audience instinctively leaned forward, cameras zoomed in, and even the crew behind the scenes froze. Dr. Phil's eyes narrowed, his hand raised slightly in a subtle wait gesture. Something, or someone, was entering. The guest's breath hitched. Her chest tightened. Could it really be him? Could the brother who vanished 30 years ago, the one she had thought lost forever, really be standing there in the studio? Her mind raced through decades of memories. Their childhood laughter, their arguments, the pain of separation, the unanswered questions that had haunted her all these years. Then he stepped fully into view. A man in his late 40s, slightly older than she remembered, but unmistakable. There was a familiar spark in his eyes, the same one she had seen as a child. The audience gasped, a collective intake of breath echoing through the studio. Dr. Phil froze mid-sentence, his calm demeanor momentarily giving way to surprise. For a long, suspended moment, neither sibling moved. Time seemed to stretch. The audience held their breath. The cameras caught every detail, the widened eyes, the slight trembling of hands, the taut expressions on faces. The tension was palpable. The estranged brother looked around the studio, taking in the faces, the cameras, the crowd, but his eyes locked on his sister. She finally whispered, almost to herself, "It's really him." Dr. Phil broke the silence with a measured tone. "Take your time. You don't have to say anything yet. This is a moment decades in the making. And whatever happens, it's okay to feel everything at once." The brother took a tentative step closer, his voice trembling slightly as he spoke. I never meant to hurt you. I left because I thought it was the only way, but not a day went by that I didn't think about you." His words hung in the air, raw and emotional, sending shivers through the audience. The studio erupted in whispers. "It's him. It's really him," someone murmured. Phones quietly began recording the historic moment. People in the audience dabbed at their eyes, some leaning forward, caught up in the intensity of the reunion. The guest's own voice quivered. "I thought you hated me. I thought you never wanted to see me again." Tears began to stream down her face as decades of grief and longing collided with the reality of seeing him in person. Dr. Phil's calm guidance kept the moment from descending into chaos. "Let's pause for a moment," he said softly. "Feel what you're feeling. Acknowledge it. And remember, you have decades to unpack, but this is the start." The brother nodded, his expression a mix of guilt, relief, and hope. He reached out a hand, and after a long pause, she took it. The audience erupted, not in applause, but in an emotional exhale, a collective sigh of relief and awe. The cameras captured every subtle gesture, the tentative handshake, the trembling smile, the unspoken connection that decades had never erased. Dr. Phil turned to the audience, engaging them directly. "What would you do if someone from your past showed up unexpectedly? How would you react if someone you thought lost forever was suddenly here?" He paused, letting the question sink in. "Comment below. We want to hear your stories." The studio remained electric, charged with emotion. Some audience members were wiping tears, others whispering to neighbors about the power of family bonds. The guest and her brother finally began to talk, their voices low but intense, sharing years of experiences, regrets, and reflections in quiet sentences. Dr. Phil watched carefully, guiding the conversation when necessary, keeping the focus on understanding, reconciliation, and the raw human emotion that had filled the studio. Every eye remained fixed on the siblings, fully immersed in the rare, historic moment unfolding before them. For 30 years, they had been apart, separated by misunderstanding, circumstance, and silence. And now, in a single moment, decades of pain began to unravel, replaced by cautious hope and the first steps toward forgiveness. What would you do if someone from your past showed up unexpectedly after decades? Comment below and share your story. The studio was charged with tension, every eye fixed on the siblings as they finally faced each other after 3 long decades. The audience was silent, the kind of silence that seemed to vibrate with emotion. Cameras captured every subtle movement, the slight shake of hands, the narrowing of eyes, the hesitant smiles that came and went like fragile flickers of light. Dr. Phil leaned slightly forward in his chair, his voice calm but steady. "Now that you're face to face, take a moment to speak from your heart. This is about honesty, about understanding, and about finally hearing each other after 30 years." The brother swallowed hard, his throat tight. "I know I hurt you. I left without explanation, and I see now how much that pain must have caused. But there were things I couldn't tell you back then, things I was afraid of, things I thought you wouldn't understand." His voice quivered, betraying the weight of years spent carrying secrets alone. The guest's eyes brimmed with tears. "All these years, I imagined every reason you could have left. I asked myself if it was something I did, something I said. I replayed that fight in my head 1,000 times. I never hated you. I needed answers." Dr. Phil nodded, his tone gentle but guiding. "It's natural to want answers, especially when you've carried this pain for so long. But sometimes, the answers aren't just words. They're a chance to hear each other, to truly understand." The brother's hands were trembling as he reached out slightly, hesitating midair. "There were circumstances I couldn't control. I thought leaving was the only way to protect you from the chaos around me. I was young, and I made mistakes. But I never stopped thinking about you, not for a single day." The audience's emotions mirrored the intensity on stage. Some clutched their own hands, some dabbed at tears, and others whispered to neighbors about the raw power of reconciliation. Phones recorded the moment, but nothing could capture the depth of the emotion unfolding live. The guest's voice cracked as she spoke. I don't know if I can forgive you fully yet. 30 years is a long time, and the hurt, it's still there. But seeing you here, it brings a part of me back that I thought I lost forever. She paused, taking a shaky breath. I need to hear everything. Why you left, why you never returned, why you stayed silent for all these years. The brother nodded, a mix of relief and vulnerability in his eyes. I'll tell you everything. But it's not easy. I want you to understand that my silence was never a lack of love. It was fear, shame, and I didn't know how to fix what I thought was broken between us. Dr. Phil interjected gently, his voice carrying authority without overshadowing their moment. This is the time to speak your truth. It's okay to be honest about fear, about mistakes, about what you didn't do right. It's also okay to let your emotions show. This is about healing, not perfection. The brother began recounting the years in painstaking detail, the challenges he faced, the choices he made, and the misunderstandings that snowballed into 3 decades of silence. The guest listened intently, sometimes flinching at painful revelations, sometimes nodding as old questions were finally answered. Do you see now why I left? He asked, voice trembling. I thought I was protecting you, but I realize now I just abandoned you. I was scared, and I didn't know how to face my own mistakes. The guest's tears flowed freely now, but a tentative smile began to emerge. I see that, she whispered. I can't erase 30 years, but I can try to understand. And maybe we can start again, even if it's slow. Dr. Phil looked at the cameras, speaking directly to viewers. This is what reconciliation looks like. It's messy, it's painful, but it's real. And it's worth watching because it shows that even after decades apart, human connection can survive. Sometimes it just needs the courage to face it. The audience erupted in a soft, emotional applause, some wiping tears, some quietly whispering about their own family stories. Phones captured every second, but no video could capture the unspoken relief, the tentative hope, and the fragile beginnings of forgiveness that filled the studio. For 30 years, anger, fear, and silence had built a wall between them. Today, with honesty, vulnerability, and a willingness to listen, cracks began to appear in that wall, enough to let light through, enough to hint at the possibility of healing. Have you ever confronted someone from your past, or tried to reconcile after years of conflict? Share your story below. The studio was tense, a quiet electricity hanging in the air. After the tentative confrontation in Part 4, both siblings had begun to speak openly, but the full weight of 30 years of separation had yet to be revealed. The audience leaned forward, the cameras capturing every flicker of emotion on their faces, every tear, every quiver of the lip, every pause heavy with meaning. Dr. Phil's voice cut through the quiet, calm but firm. Now is the time to speak everything, to leave nothing unsaid. Sometimes, the truths we hold back are the very things that shape our lives, and sharing them is the first step to understanding. The brother took a deep breath. There's something I've never told anyone, not even my closest friends. When I left, it wasn't just anger or fear. I was being threatened. There were circumstances I couldn't explain, things that could have hurt you if I stayed. I thought I was protecting you by leaving, but I know now I hurt you more than anyone could have imagined. His voice wavered. I carried that guilt every single day. The guest's hands trembled as she processed this revelation. You left because of danger? She whispered. All these years, I thought you abandoned me because you didn't care. You have no idea how many nights I cried, wondering why you walked away. I blamed myself. I blamed everyone. I didn't know the truth. A ripple of emotion passed through the audience, audible in small gasps and whispered reactions. Phones in the crowd recorded the confession, but the raw, palpable emotion couldn't be captured by any camera. Dr. Phil remained silent, letting the siblings speak, letting the truth unfold without interruption. The brother continued, I couldn't come back sooner because I had to make sure you were safe. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now how that choice caused decades of pain. I never stopped thinking about you, every day, every hour. Tears streamed down the guest's face as decades of misunderstanding collided with the revelation. All this time, I thought you hated me. I thought you never wanted to see me again. I punished myself with that thought for years. Her voice cracked. She took a shaky breath and continued. I can't even describe the mix of anger, relief, and confusion I feel right now. 30 years of questions, and now, suddenly, I have some answers. Dr. Phil leaned forward, his tone gentle but guiding. This is why honesty matters, even when it's hard. Sometimes the things we think are unforgivable have explanations we never knew. And sometimes, hearing the truth changes everything. The brother nodded, voice breaking. I know I can't take back the years we lost, but I want to try to make up for them. I want to rebuild what I can, step by step, with your permission. The guest's expression softened. I want that too, but it won't be easy. 30 years is a long time. There's so much pain, so much hurt, but maybe this is the first step. A hush fell over the studio, the audience captivated by the raw emotional intensity. Some clutched tissues, others held hands with neighbors, and a few quietly whispered, recognizing their own family struggles mirrored in this reunion. Cameras lingered on every glance, every pause, every tear, every hesitant smile. Dr. Phil spoke directly to the viewers at home. This is what family reconciliation looks like. It's messy, it's painful, but it's real, and it's important. Some of you watching may have waited decades for this kind of moment. Remember, it's never too late to try, even when it feels impossible. The siblings shared a long, tentative hug, the kind that carried decades of grief, longing, and unspoken words. The audience finally exhaled, some applauding softly, others wiping away tears, as if releasing their own bottled emotions alongside the siblings' reunion. The brother's voice was barely audible over his own emotions. I never stopped loving you. I never stopped wishing I could explain myself. I hope you can forgive me someday. The guest nodded, her voice shaking but sincere. I forgive you. I don't forget, but I forgive. And I want to try to start again, even if it's slow. Dr. Phil turned to the cameras, his expression calm but meaningful. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of truth. It doesn't erase the past, but it can open the door to a future you never thought possible. Have you ever had a family secret or misunderstanding revealed after years? How did it change your relationship? Share your story in the comments below. The studio remained emotionally charged, the air thick with tension, relief, and hope. 30 years of pain, misunderstanding, and separation had begun to unravel. And while the journey of healing would take time, the first critical steps toward reconciliation had finally been taken, witnessed by an audience that felt every moment with them. The studio had been silent for what felt like an eternity. The air was thick with emotion, every audience member caught in the raw intensity of a reunion that had taken 3 decades to unfold. The siblings sat facing each other now, closer than ever, their hands barely letting go, their breaths heavy with emotion, their eyes locked in a way that spoke more than words ever could. Dr. Phil's voice, calm yet commanding, cut through the silence. This is the moment where you begin to take the first real steps toward healing. The past is heavy, but you're choosing to face it together. The brother's eyes glistened with tears. I've carried the weight of leaving you for 30 years. Every birthday I missed, every milestone I wasn't there for. I felt the emptiness of those moments like a shadow over my life. His voice wavered as he continued. I want to do better. I want to be here now, fully, and I want to rebuild the bond we lost. The guest's lips trembled as she smiled through tears. I've waited for this for so long. I can't undo the past either, but I can try. I can try to accept you back into my life. I want us to be siblings again, truly. A soft murmur ran through the audience, many dabbing at tears. Cameras captured every delicate gesture, the gentle squeeze of hands, the tentative leaning toward each other, the relief evident in their expressions. This was not just a reunion. It was a catharsis, a release of 30 years of pain, confusion, and longing. Dr. Phil leaned forward slightly. Forgiveness is never easy, but you're showing everyone that it's possible, even after decades of separation. And for those of you watching, it's a lesson. No matter how long it's been, reaching out, being honest, and opening your heart can change everything. The brothers swallowed hard, voice barely above a whisper. I want to tell you everything I never could before about why I left, what I went through, the fears I faced. I want you to know the truth, even if it hurts. The guest nodded slowly. I want to hear it. I want to understand. Because without understanding, forgiveness can't be complete. I don't want to live another day wondering about the past. I want us to face it together. Dr. Phil turned to the audience, encouraging engagement. Have you ever witnessed someone stand up to fear and rebuild a connection after decades? Comment below and share your story. Sometimes, seeing others face their past can inspire us to face our own. The brother began to recount more details, his voice steady now, but emotional. There were threats I couldn't explain, moments I feared for your safety, and decisions I thought were protective but instead caused pain. I've regretted them every single day, but now I want to make it right. Slowly, carefully, one step at a time. The guest's expression softened as she listened, her hands gripping his. I see that now. I understand the fear, the love hidden behind the mistakes. And I can begin to forgive, not for the past, but to give us a chance at the future. A wave of emotions swept across the studio. Some audience members quietly wiped away tears. Others whispered to neighbors, and many nodded knowingly. This was the kind of moment that resonates with anyone who has experienced loss, estrangement, or family pain. Dr. Phil gestured toward the siblings. Notice the courage here. Both of you are choosing to confront decades of hurt and misunderstanding. You're choosing connection over resentment. And that's why this moment matters, not just for you, but for everyone watching. The siblings embraced fully this time, a long, heartfelt hug that carried the weight of 30 years. The audience erupted, not in cheers, but in soft, emotional applause, the kind that comes from witnessing something deeply human, deeply real. Cameras captured every second, but no lens could fully convey the relief, the hope, and the tentative joy that radiated from this reunion. The brother pulled back slightly, looking into his sister's eyes. I'm here. I'm not leaving again. I want to be part of your life, for real, from now on. The guest smiled, tears still flowing. And I'm here too. Let's take it one day at a time. We have a lot to rebuild, but I feel like we can do it. Dr. Phil faced the audience, speaking directly to them. Moments like these remind us why family matters. Even when the past seems insurmountable, when decades have passed, the human heart has an incredible capacity to forgive, to reconnect, and to heal. Have you ever witnessed someone stand up to the past and rebuild a relationship? Share your story and thoughts in the comments below. If this reunion inspired you, type reunion in the comments to celebrate forgiveness. The studio seemed to exhale collectively. The tension that had gripped the audience for hours melted into relief and hope. 30 years of separation had been confronted, truths had been revealed, and the first real steps toward reconciliation had been taken. In that moment, the audience, the siblings, and even Dr. Phil himself shared an understanding. Family can endure, love can survive, and even after decades of silence, reconciliation is always possible. The studio had slowly begun to breathe again. The tension that had gripped every corner, every heartbeat, was now replaced by a quiet warmth. The siblings sat side by side, still holding hands, faces wet with tears but illuminated by tentative smiles. 30 years of separation had collided with understanding, forgiveness, and the first true steps toward rebuilding their bond. Dr. Phil leaned forward, his tone calm and reflective. What we witness today isn't just a reunion. It's a reminder of how fragile and powerful family can be. Decades may pass, mistakes may be made, and misunderstandings may grow, but when people are willing to face their past, miracles happen. The audience remained in awe, some wiping tears, others whispering about their own family experiences. Phones were still out, capturing this historic moment. Clips from the show would soon travel far beyond the studio walls, touching lives across cities, countries, and continents. The brother spoke again, his voice steady but emotional. "I never thought this day would come. I feared it would be too late. But seeing you here, forgiving me, listening, it's more than I ever could have hoped for. I want to be part of your life now, and I promise I will never leave again." The guest's voice was soft, but full of resolve. "I want that too. We have a lot to rebuild, yes, but today proves that it's possible. And maybe our story can show others that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's courage." Dr. Phil nodded, turning slightly to address the audience and the millions watching at home. Family stories like these remind us all that it's never too late to make amends. Reconnecting isn't easy, but the first step is often just showing up, being honest, and being willing to forgive. The studio erupted in soft applause, the kind that comes from witnessing a raw, human moment rather than a performance. Cameras captured the siblings hugging once more, faces pressed together, sharing a quiet intimacy that spoke of decades of longing finally acknowledged. Outside the studio, viewers across the world began to react. Social media lit up with clips of the reunion, hashtags trending about forgiveness, family, and reconciliation. Millions were touched by the bravery, vulnerability, and humanity displayed by the siblings. Comments poured in, stories of estranged relatives, reunions long overdue, and messages of hope inspired by the courage to face the past. Dr. Phil leaned back in his chair, smiling warmly. Today, these siblings reminded us that love can endure even the longest absences. Pain doesn't have to define us, and absence doesn't have to mean the end. There is power in showing up, in facing the truth, and in offering forgiveness. The siblings looked at each other, hands still intertwined. "This is only the beginning," the guest said. "We'll take it one day at a time, but it feels right. It feels like we finally have a chance to rebuild what was lost." The brother nodded, adding, "And I hope that by sharing our story, we can inspire others who may have lost hope. It's never too late to reconnect, to forgive, to heal." Dr. Phil addressed the audience one final time, a soft smile on his face. "If this story touched you, remember, family, forgiveness, and understanding are worth fighting for. And sometimes, just showing up can change a lifetime." If you believe in the power of reconciliation, type reunion in the comments below and share your own story of family, hope, and forgiveness. As the cameras slowly panned across the audience, capturing their emotional reactions, the siblings embraced one last time for the show. The moment was complete. Decades of pain confronted, truths revealed, and a path toward healing finally begun. The studio lights dimmed slightly, but the warmth of human connection, the courage to forgive, the bravery to reconcile, lingered long after the show had ended.